What's up, guys? Welcome back to Jimmy Talks. We got a lot to cover today. This is an important video. I've been wanting to make this for a while. I've been wanting to share it for a while. So let's get into it. Let's get into the crisis that's crushing the American dream for millions of real citizens, which is the intertwined. They both go together. Housing and job catastrophe that didn't just magically appear out of nowhere. If you guys kind of remember, we'll go through time a little bit. We'll go through history. I love history. We have to read it. If you don't read it, then history's doomed to repeat itself. But they're both intrinsically connected, the job and housing crisis. Why do I apply on LinkedIn and Indeed to 10 million jobs and none of them call me back? Why is a house $450,000 for a shed in the ghetto and you live next to a hobo and he might shoot you? So obviously that's an over-exaggeration, but I digress. This catastrophe has been building for quite some time. And as of recently, accelerating violently since 2020. And the root causes are kind of being obscured by the mainstream narrative to an extent. Depends who you watch. But forget the watered-down talking points you'll read online, whatever that is, or a corporate-owned news article company. This is not like some complicated economics theory either. It's actually much simpler than that, and it doesn't require an economics degree or a policy expert to look at all this and say, hey, this is something we can fix. This is crazy. It's actually deliberate and it's systematic. It's dismantling of opportunities for native-born Americans through policies that prioritize everyone else over the citizens who built this nation. So let's dissect exactly how we got here, who's responsible, and ultimately, my favorite part of the video, it'll be near the end. I've got timestamps set up. The solution to this, the America First solution to this. There's going to be no bullshit here. There will be no politically correct verbiage and terms being used. I know that's very normie and conservative to say, but I just want to put that out there where this is all just factual information. It's just the truth that you need to understand why your rent's unaffordable and why good jobs are just going away. They're vanishing. And why the future feels so uncertain for Gen Z. And trust me, all the numbers I'm going to throw at you, they don't lie. That's one of the things I like about math. They scream the reality that they don't want you to hear about. All right. As I said, it all started in 2020. I'll get into part one of the video. How COVID propped it up. Like I said, 2020. Let's start here because context is everything. Do you remember 2019? And yeah, I know for the average person scrolling TikTok or doom scrolling Twitter or whatever, Instagram Reels, looking back 5 or 6 years might as well be ancient history. But bear with me. In 2019, the American job market was a lot more functional. I had it myself. You could walk into a store or a factory, an office, fast food place. Even that recently, there was still paper applications. It wasn't all online. Anyways, that's just my experience. But apply online, in paper, in person, whatever. You could get a job relatively easily if you're willing to just put in the slightest modicum of effort. And the home prices back then weren't exactly what boomers paid in the 70s and the 80s, but they were within a realm of possibility for people just starting out, especially with interest rates at around reasonable levels. The system was flawed as it always is. It wasn't actively rigged against the average citizen in the way that it is today. Now, was the border perfect back then? No, but the floodgates hadn't been deliberately thrown open either. More on that later. Donald Trump talked a big game about this wall, sure, but let's be honest, he never actually built it, and it's not the full effective barrier that he promised. And in his defense, Congress just really didn't let him. They didn't give him the funding. They just kept blocking it. So they refused to finance it. They're like, we'll let you do it, but we don't want to pay for it. And well, we'll make Mexico pay for it, and that didn't happen either. So while the idea was out there, the physical barrier was not there. And illegal crossings, while it was an issue back then, it hadn't reached this catastrophic civilization-altering level that we see now. This is part of the reason why you can't get a job or a nice house for a reasonable price. More on that later, but the stage was set, and the main event hadn't started yet. Also, and before you call me a Trump supporter, I'm not. He's really, really disappointed a lot of people. So this is just a historical analysis to set the framework. But anyways, fast forward to 2020. We're out of 2019. We're now going to 2020. Shift your brain towards that. This is when everything radically changed, as everybody knows. The year that changed everything, not because of coronavirus alone, but because of the response to it, which I've detailed extensively in my Scamdemic video. If you want the full breakdown of how that was a massive psychological operation designed to break the populace. But anyways, for the sake of this housing and jobs discussion, the critical factor here was the economic manipulation. Interest rates plummeted to historic lows, like 2.5 to 3% for a home purchase. And it sounds great, but on the surface, yes, it does sound great, but this was not organic market behavior. What this actually was the Federal Reserve desperately trying to prop up the collapsing economy because of all the lockdowns and stuff. And they were flooding the system with cheap money. And cheap money combined with artificial scarcity, which was created later, is the perfect recipe for asset inflation. A house is, I don't like to say it's an asset, but it is. It's somewhere you're supposed to live, but it's an asset. But people could borrow more money to buy a house. And so they did. And so they bid up the home prices. But crucially, this was before the massive demographic shockwave hit. The real explosion in unaffordability didn't happen during 2020, the year 2020 itself, with those low rates. It happened afterwards as the consequences of the policies enacted during the pandemic fully rippled through the system, compounded by the next administration's deliberate choices. So 2020 was the spark, and the subsequent years after was the fire being lit and running. Now, we're shifting from 2019 to 2020. Now we are going to 2021 to 2024, the Biden administration specifically. So let's jump squarely into that. And before the keyboard warriors start typing rage comments, I'll tell you again, I don't like Trump either. None of these politicians really care about you. But anyways, this isn't about a party. It's not red team versus blue team. Get out of that conundrum if you're still in that. It's about policy outcomes and the survival of the middle class. This is really what we're talking about. But anyways, Biden took office, and one of his very first acts was to effectively dismantle border enforcement. He froze border wall construction funding. He effectively restricted ICE with executive orders their ability to conduct raids and enforce immigration laws. And he implemented policies that made it incredibly easy for migrants to enter and remain in the country. The catch and release program that he had, it became the SOP, the standard operating procedure. It was not the exception. It was the rule. So the message was right in front of your face. Come on in. We won't send you back. And they did. In numbers not seen in recorded American history, not just as a single wave, but as a sustained, relentless tsunami that just kept coming over and over again. It didn't end. Now, despite what the news might be telling you right now in August 2025, as this video publishes, the idea that mass deportations are suddenly happening under some revived Trump campaign is largely fiction. The machinery for that scale of enforcement simply wasn't rebuilt during the previous term, and the political will, even now, seems to be lacking. So the damage from the Biden years, it's already baked into our society, it's baked into our economy and the housing market, and it's irreversible unless we take drastic action. So first of all, here is problem number one on why you can't get a good job or a nice house. Mass migration, legal and illegal. So let's talk concrete numbers. It's undeniable numbers from official government sources, because this isn't about anecdotal evidence. This is the sheer overwhelming scale of the influx. So we'll start with the illegal migrant numbers, which was tracked by CBP, or Customs and Border Protection, through their data, which is called encounters. Now, we need to understand what encounters means in Border Patrol definitions. It's not just simple apprehensions at the fence. It encompasses three main categories. First is apprehension, meaning someone was caught making an illegal entry. Second is inadmissible at port of entry. This is their definitions. Someone who shows up at a legal crossing point, like a bridge or a checkpoint, gets inspected, is found inadmissible, meaning they don't have valid visas or documentation, and is held briefly before being processed out. Think of like people with their visa overstaying. They try to sneak back in. And third, finally, is expulsion and reinstatement. This is cases where someone is caught a short distance inside the U.S. after having been previously removed. Now, these are the official CBP encounter figures for the Biden years 2021 to 2024. In 2021, we had 1.9 million. 2022, we had 2.7 million. 2023, we had 3.2 million. And 2024, we had 2.9 million. So when we add all that up, the total is 10.8 million people who entered the country without authorization. And they got past legal immigration in the process to do that entirely. And this is only the people who CBP caught or processed at the border. This doesn't count the millions who successfully evaded getting captured, and they just melted into the interior of our country. They're the gotaways that Border Patrol estimates run into the hundreds of thousands per year, probably a couple million. But even strictly speaking about the official encounter report, that's 10 million people added to the U.S. population illegally in 4 years. We're not even talking about the ones who've been here and they got through, and people who maybe even did this before the Biden years. People who shouldn't be here, people who place immediate massive strain on housing, jobs, schools, hospitals, and social services with government-provided and funded money. Because federal governments in large cities like New York City and even some cities in California were actually paying for their food and lodging. If you remember North Carolina disaster, FEMA did not pay for it because they had no money, because all the FEMA funding went to housing illegal immigrants. Yeah. So all the people in North Carolina who had their homes destroyed, FEMA could do nothing for them because they didn't have the money to do it. So this isn't immigration anymore. It's really an invasion of our sovereignty and our social contract. Anyways, but here is where it gets far, far worse. And this is the part the media and the politics really don't want you to focus on, because it's even larger, and in many more ways, it's insidious. It's legal migration. The numbers are way more. I really hate when conservatives are like, oh, but as long as it's legal, like, dude, it's still a shit ton of people. It's still contributing to a problem. You can't just take a bunch of people and put them into a population all at once. It's obviously going to disrupt things. I call it sinister and insidious, not because these people sneaking into our country are inherently bad people. Jesus teaches us not to hate people, which is why I say that. But regardless, it's to show the scale and pace of this government push influx of immigrants. Let me go back to the hate thing real quick, too. I don't hate anyone because I've seen people say, like, why don't you hate them? You should. Like, it's a waste of personal energy to sit there and fixate and hate on somebody, because I really love the definition of words. And if you look at what hate means, it's not just a strong dislike. So anyways, you combine all this legal immigration with illegal immigrant flow, and it's really just destroyed the balance of supply and demand that keeps a society functioning, aka houses and jobs. It's literally just basic economics. It's supply and demand. There's a lot more demand because of foreign invaders coming in, and there's not as much supply anymore. So prices go up naturally. It's that simple. When you have a fixed or slowly growing supply of something essential like houses or decent paying jobs, and you suddenly inject this number of massive, unprecedented surge in demand, meaning millions upon millions of foreigners competing for those same resources that Americans need, then prices will skyrocket and opportunities will vanish for the existing native population. It's not that complicated. It's just math. I always hated math in school, but what I really do love about math is that the numbers don't lie. So now let's get into legal migrant numbers. And the legal migration numbers under Biden are staggering. And also Trump is doing it himself. So let's go straight to the Department of Homeland Security, or DHS, for the official count of LPRs, which is legal permanent residents, immigrants. It's green card holders and people getting permanent residency. In 2021, 740,000. 2022, 1 million, just over a million. 2023, 1.1 million. 2024, just over a million again. Adding those up, we get 3.9 million, almost 4 million new green card holders in just 4 years. That's permanent residents, and they're people legally entitled to live and work here indefinitely, adding to the population. But wait, this is not the only new legal permanent residences. It doesn't include the massive number of people in long-term lawful presence who aren't yet green card holders but are fully authorized to live and work here. This is called temporary protected status, or TPS holders. You have DACA renewals, which Biden massively expanded, and other parole programs. DHS estimates this category added roughly 2.3 million people during the same time period. So combining the illegal encounters, which is 10 million, with the new green cards, which is 4 million, and the long-term lawful presence, which is 2 million, we're already at 16 million. It's 16 million new people legally or illegally entered the country within 4 years. That's a lot of people, and we're still not done counting the full scope of the mass migration, because legal migration isn't just green cards, and that's what we just pulled the numbers for. It's a lot of temporary visas, each adding significant numbers to the population that's competing for housing and jobs right now. So now let's break down the major temporary visa categories from 2021 to 2024 using DHS and State Department data. H-1B visas from 21 to 24, 1.6 million new approvals. These are workers brought in specifically for jobs Americans are supposedly unavailable for, though we'll see later how that's often a myth and it's just used to suppress wages. H-2A visas, which are farm workers, 1.2 million approvals and renewals. This adds immense pressure on low-wage labor markets and housing in rural areas. H-2B visas, which is non-agricultural seasonal workers like hospitality, landscaping, yada yada, 470,000. It's direct competition for service industry jobs that Americans used to fill. L1 visas, which are intra-company transfers like managers and stuff like that, 174,000 approvals. They're often used as a backdoor for skilled laborers, and it bypasses the H-1B cap, the amount that's limited number coming over. I wasn't able to pull the 2024 numbers because they're not released yet for L1 visas. We're still not done. F1 visas, which is for students, college kids, 1.5 million new entries and status changes. While they are students, they still live in the community, they still rent houses, and many stay after graduation competing for American jobs. Then we have J1 visas, which is exchange programs, 864,000. It's a similar impact to F1 visas, which is students. And a lot of these are hospitality or like cultural programs. Now we have temporary protected status approvals and renewals. These are a lot of people from Venezuela, Afghanistan, and Ukraine, 1,100,000. Now we have asylum grants, U visa approvals, and DACA renewals. 277,000 people legally authorized to reside and work while their cases are processed or after approval. Now, with this batch of numbers, let's tally these specific temporary visa programs. 7.1 million is the total. Over 7 million people entering legally on temporary statuses. They're swelling communities, competing for housing, and taking jobs. Adding this to our previous total of 14.9 million illegal encounters, green cards, and initial lawful presence brings us up to 22 million people. 22 million people who arrived or were newly authorized within just 4 years. And this still doesn't capture the full picture. Why and how? Someone may ask. Because the government itself is acknowledging the sheer volume of administrative actions related to these people. Trump recently talked about reviewing 55 million visas. Instead of just deporting people, he wants to be a pressure cooker and, blow off some steam, of not mass deporting people. And he's like, we're going to review 55 million visas. So what does that mean? It means the actual physical visas that are printed or the electronic authorizations that are issued by DHS and the State Department between 2021 and 2024. That's what he's talking about. This includes every single category: tourist visas, student visas, work visas, green cards, border crossing numbers, parole documents, literally every piece of paper or electronic record stamped by the government which authorizes someone to enter or stay. The official count for these visa issuances is 55 million. But hold on, we're still missing massive chunks of the population surge. What about the estimated 12 million illegal immigrants already living here before 2021? That's the widely accepted Pew Research estimate from 2019. They've really been saying this since like 2007. Then there are the births of illegal immigrants. People like to call them anchor babies. Children born in the U.S. to non-citizen parents since 2021. Well, why don't we look at that? Because they're automatically citizens now too. The CDC birth statistics tell a story here. Approximately 4 million new U.S. citizens added to the population purely through birthright citizenship, which we should revoke, and it'll be part of my solutions later on in the video. But this also just adds to the immigrant population. And finally, this constant churn of visa revocations, like people who lose status, but they just stay anyways. Not supposed to be here, but they just stay. You have parole renewals, DACA renewals, asylum pending cases, and more reentries after the 2-year reset. So DHS tracking shows this administrative activity adds another 21 million data points representing individuals repeatedly interacting within the immigration system, and it often signifies prolonged or repeated presence. If we conservatively estimate this 21 million represents unique individuals or significant periods of presence, the cumulative effect is undeniable, really. So let's synthesize this. Starting from the baseline pre-2021 illegal population of 12 million, adding the 10 million illegal encounters, adding the 4 million new green cards, adding the 7 million in other visas, adding the 277,000 in temporary visas, adding the 4 million birthright citizenship births, and factoring the churn represented by the 21 million administrative touches, the total additional population pressure exerted on American housing and job markets since the start of 2020 is conservatively in the range of 60 million to even possibly 100 million people. It's 60 to 100 million people. Let that sink in. 100 million people. The U.S. population, according to the 2024 census, is approximately 340 million. When the U.S. population was 100 million less than today, it was around 1986, when it was roughly 240 million. And guess what happened in the 80s, 1986? The boomers, the generation now holding most of the power and the assets like homes, bought their first houses relatively easily. They built their wealth and they established a middle-class lifestyle that we were all promised. That opportunity window slammed shut because the system is now fundamentally broken by this artificial population explosion. Almost 30% of the country is here on a visa or illegally. 30% of people in America are foreigners. This is why you can't get a house. This is why good jobs are vanishing. It's not just inflation. Though the Fed's money printing is a major accelerant, I'm going to get to. The core engine in this unprecedented surge in population density is driven by deliberate policy choices, and it's the main reason why you can't get a good house for a reasonable price or a decent paying job. And they said the great replacement theory was just that. It was a theory. You're far right if you believe in it. I mean, this was and still happening in Europe to this day as well, and in Canada. So it's not really a theory anymore because now we're all seeing it with our own eyes. Now, let's touch up on the next part of this crisis. Problem number 2 of why you can't get a job, even with a degree. So, as if it wasn't obvious by now why you can't get a house or job when a quarter or more of the country is foreigners in a massive explosion, it's not only low-wage jobs at places like Burger King or McDonald's, though, yes, these jobs are traditionally the entry point for American teenagers and young adults while they're still in school, are increasingly filled by immigrants. And these are important jobs. People need to get their food. They want food. This is an important job, despite what people say. It is low skill, but it's not like you're worthless or anything if you work here. But it's being taken away from them. It's often illegal or temporary visa people who are willing to accept lower wages and worse working conditions because they're sending the money back home anyways, and they live 10 people to a one-room apartment anyways. Let me use an anecdotal evidence again here. Go to any Tim Hortons up in Canada, for example. I've been to Canada numerous times myself, so I can say this with confidence, and I have Canadian friends. And My people in the Great White North, my viewers who are in Canada, know this as well, and they see who's working there. It's not the local kids anymore making your coffee and breakfast sandwiches. It's mostly Indian immigrants who barely know English. It's taking what used to be a classic first job for Canadian teenagers, like, "Sir, would you like a medium double?" It's a reality, but the devastation goes deeper than just entry-level jobs, which are still important. People who have computer science degrees know this the best. The tech industry, the supposed engine of the modern American economy, has been absolutely destroyed by the H-1B visa program. Companies in big tech and Silicon Valley, they've used H-1B visas to replace the experienced higher-paid American workers with cheap foreign labor. And this is because H-1B workers, often tied to their employer for their visa status, accept significantly lower wages than Americans would for the same exact role. So they become effectively indentured servants and are unable to easily change jobs because they don't want to lose their visa status, and they're thus willing to tolerate poor conditions and suppressed pay. It's not about filling shortages. It's a deliberate wage suppression scheme, and it's enabled by government policy, and it's not limited to coding. Engineering fields. These were, supposed to go to college and get something that you can get a job in. This was seen as the way to go. They also face higher rates of unemployment. Chemical, mechanical, electrical, aerospace. They're all seeing the same pattern. Entry-level positions that used to launch American engineering careers are now routinely filled by H-1B visa holders, and they're willing to work for 30 to 40% less money. And the result is a generation of American college graduates, particularly in STEM fields, which used to be heralded as bulletproof for finding a job, are finding their career paths blocked, and their wages stagnant or just pitiful, and their prospects are kind of low. And it's all while companies boast about diversity metrics that often mask this wage-depressing importation of labor. Now, the next problem. Federal Reserve money printing. Combine this deliberate wage suppression through mass importation with the Federal Reserve's relentless money printing, and you have a perfect storm for economic destruction. Trillions of dollars chasing the same number of goods and services, and crucially, jobs and houses. Which brings us on to the housing crisis. Housing being purchased by corporate entities. And yes, immigration is the primary driver of the demand explosion, which is why I started off with it. But it's working in deadly synergy with other factors. The next major culprit you hear about is institutional investors and hedge funds like Blackstone and companies like Invitation Homes, which Blackstone owns a majority in. After the 2008 crash, they realized that single-family homes could be a lucrative rental asset class, especially when they're securitized. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Remember that saying? Yeah, it's just a conspiracy. But anyways, starting around 2012, by accelerating massively during the low-rate, high-demand Biden years, they scooped up entire neighborhoods. And this was also in the Obama years as well. This is when the economy was relatively stable. And they were buying homes faster than individual families could compete. They now have an estimated 700,000 single-family rental homes nationwide. So think about that. 700,000 homes, that's potential starter homes for young American families, are permanently removed from the for-sale market. They're locked into corporate portfolios designed to extract the maximum rent from the very people shut out of ownership. Companies with names like American Homes for Rent, which sounds straight out of like a dystopian movie, are the major players in this. They aren't building new supply, they're just hoarding the already existing supply, thereby effectively turning the American dream into a corporate rental scheme. This directly removes homes from the market Americans need to buy, and it fuels the bidding wars and the price spikes that we see. Next, zoning laws. Institutional buying is not the only part of the supply problem. The deliberate reduction in new housing construction is also another key factor here. Zoning laws, often controlled by existing homeowners who don't want new development near them, severely restrict where and what can be built. Environment reviews, while sometimes necessary, are also weaponized to delay or kill projects for years, but I digress. labor shortages partly caused by the immigration policies that displaced American construction workers with less skilled or foreign labor, both legally and illegally. We've seen some videos of ICE raids on construction sites, for example. It also creates instability in the trades, and this also plays a role on why new houses aren't being built. The result of this is the housing supply growth has lagged far behind population growth for decades. But the gap became even worse under the current administration's policies. Then there's the Federal Reserve's money printing, as we already said. The trillions in new dollars flooding the system. You have a bunch of new people coming in here. When you have a fixed or slowly growing supply of houses, a massive surge in both population and the money supply chasing them, prices must simply just skyrocket. The liquidity had to go somewhere, and housing, seen as a relatively safe asset, absorbed a huge chunk of it. Inflation didn't just make your groceries expensive, it supercharged the housing bubble by making the dollars used to bid on homes more plentiful. There's more money to go around because we just printed more of it. So there's the biggest main problems. It's just the perfect storm of no jobs and no houses. We have a deliberate, massive increase in population. It created an unprecedented demand for housing and jobs, institutional investors hoarding existing housing stock, restrictive local policies stifling the new supply, and the Federal Reserve's money printing inflating the value of all assets, including homes. The American middle class is being systematically erased. Wages are stagnant or falling despite nominal increase because of inflation and wage suppression from imported labor. Home ownership is increasingly out of touch for Gen Z and millennials, really. The loneliness epidemic is partly fueled by this too, one could say, because people can't afford to live near their family or form a stable household, and it leads to isolation. This isn't an accident. This is the logical, if perhaps intended, outcome of policies that prioritize, dare I say it, globalist agendas, corporate profits, and ideological goals over the well-being of American citizens. It mirrors a pattern of societal collapse like the late Roman Empire or the Ottoman Empire, where internal cohesion broke down under the strain of uncontrolled migration, economic inequality, and a ruling class that was just disconnected from the needs of the populace. Dare I say it again, the Great Replacement theory, air quote, it's in full effect. My friends in 2018 and 2019, when I was like 20, 21 years old, they had no clue what I was talking about when I first mentioned this stuff and first got red-pilled as a youngin'. That's when I got red-pilled around 2018, 2019. But anyways, it's all unfolding. This phenomenon must end. My nation is under attack. It's being pilfered and pillaged. And I'm building something here on this channel. It's a channel of patriots who are going to go against all of this and fight for what's right. Not literally fight, because you can't say things on YouTube. Not advocating for violence. This brings me on to the best part of the video, though. And I am never doom-pilled, and I will not give up. There's always a way. And if there's a will, there is a way. So let's get to the solutions to the problem. Now, before we get to this crucial part of the video, how do we fix this? How do we salvage the American dream for the citizens who built this country? It requires a radical, decisive action. And it's rooted in unapologetic America First policy framework. No half measures, no politically safe compromises that kick the can down the road. This is the survival of our nation at stake. People can't buy houses and they can't get a good fucking job. This shit is serious. So here's the plan, starting on day 0 of a truly America First administration. Step 1, immediate border shutdown, mass deportations immediately and permanently. This sounds simple, but it requires a complete break from the past. Trump talked about it, and he didn't deliver. He's not doing it, despite what the media says. We cannot afford this failure again. On day 1, the border is shut down. It's not managed. It's not secured with more ineffective fencing, but it's closed to illegal entry completely. This means deploying all available military and law enforcement assets, such as the Border Patrol, the National Guard, and active duty military if necessary, to physically prevent crossings. It means reinstating and enforcing Title 42-style expulsion authority immediately for all nationalities. It means ending catch and release permanently. Every single person encountered illegally entering is detained and swiftly removed. No exceptions, no endless asylum claims clogging the system. Simultaneously, mandatory E-Verify becomes the law of the land. Every single employer, without exception, must verify work eligibility using the federal E-Verify system, cross-checked in real time with Social Security Administration and DMV, Department of Motor Vehicle, databases to prevent fake IDs and stolen Social Security numbers. No more loopholes. Any employer caught knowingly hiring illegal immigrants faces mandatory prison sentences and extremely hefty fines. This is the only solution to the pilfering of our country. You will be put in jail to think about how you wish to sell out Americans because you want to hire illegals. There is no, I didn't know. Ignorance is not an excuse for violating the law and undermining American workers. This is coupled with massive nationwide ICE raids. There's trucks everywhere with ICE guys on it, conducted with National Guard support for security, targeting workplaces, neighborhoods, and transportation hubs known to harbor large illegal populations. These raids operate under a new standard. There will be no bail for illegal aliens. If you are in the country illegally, you are detained pending removal, period. There is no taxpayer-funded lawyers for stupid appeals, no waiting in hotels, detention until deportation. The message must be absolute and enforced without mercy. There is no path to stay. There is only the path back to where you came from. This is enforcing the law and restoring sovereignty. It's what every other nation on earth does to protect its borders and its citizens. So we can do it too. Step 2 for the America First Patriot. Slash legal immigration to extremely low levels or even altogether and redirect our America First resources. Sealing the border stops the bleeding, but we need to address the legal immigration pipeline that's been more destructive than illegal crossings, as well as the money being printed currently being sent to foreign nation. Billions to Ukraine, billions to Israel. It must be immediately redirected to fund our own domestic enforcement and deportation efforts. America comes first. Our border security, our deportation machinery, our court system dedicated to processing removals, these get fully funded with the money we were giving away to foreign nations. This means establishing dedicated immigration courts with a single judge assigned per case, operating with military efficiency. Hearings happen within 24 to 48 hours of apprehension. The standard of proof for illegal entry is clear. If you cannot provide legal status immediately, you are ordered to be removed. Appeals are limited and they're fast-tracked. Removal flights are going to go daily, multiple times a day, back to the countries of origin. You're leaving. No delays, no sanctuary cities that are obstructing. The federal authorities such as ICE and CBP will supersede these obstructions when it comes to something as serious as this. This is the future of our nation we're talking about. Simultaneously, legal immigration must be cut to a fraction of current levels. H-1B visas are permanently halted for a period of 6 months or half of the fiscal year, and then the next 6 months will be slashed by 90%. The data is clear. Nearly half of H-1B positions are for entry-level roles that Americans are qualified for and would take it if they were offered a fair wage. This program has been a scam for wage suppression, and it ends now. Refugee admissions have the same rules, halted completely and are then cut by 90%. While we should maintain a small, well-vetted humanitarian program, with the USA being a good Christian nation, the current scale is unsustainable and it's often just exploited. All other employment-based visas like H-2As, H-2Bs, and L-1s will face drastic cuts and the same as the other ones, until the American labor market, particularly in agriculture, hospitality, and tech, shows clear, sustained signs of American worker participation at fair wages. The era of using foreign labor to undercut American wages is over. Your problems as an immigrant, however dire, are not America's problem to solve at the expense of American citizens' own livelihoods. Step 3 in the Patriots' vision for the America First politics on fixing the home crisis, we will rebuild the American Home Ownership Foundation. Fixing housing requires attacking both supply and demand, but with the border sealed and immigration slashed at this point, the demand pressure begins to ease on the Americans. Now we'll rebuild the path to home ownership for the American. First, we will pass the National Family Homestead Grant Act. This provides a 50-year interest-free loan to qualifying American citizens with families of 3 or fewer children to purchase a build-ready lot. This loan will be used with the money that we are not spending on illegals and the money we're not spending to Israel and sending to Ukraine. And the family will pay on that lot in the home that they build. This isn't a handout. It's an investment in the future tax base and the stability of American families. It directly addresses the land cost barrier, which is a major component of home prices. Second, we break the stranglehold of corporate landlords. Corporations with $50 billion or more in assets are permanently barred from purchasing single-family homes. No more Blackstone, no more Invitation Homes, no more American Homes for Rent, or pension funds hoarding an entire neighborhood. Furthermore, any institutional owner currently holding more than 1,000 single-family rental units must sell 10% of their inventory effective immediately. Crucially, these homes can only be sold to owner-occupant buyers, which are real families that are going to move in, not other investors buying it so that people can rent it. This forces a massive, steady re-entry of corporate-owned homes back into the owner-occupied market, directly increasing supply for American citizens. This is not socialism, by definition. It's correcting a market distortion created by government policy that favored corporations over citizens. It returns homes to the people, funded by the citizens themselves through future taxes. And third, to combat the loneliness epidemic and incentivize family formation, we introduce loan forgiveness tied to family size under the National Family Homestead Grant. For every qualifying child in the household that's under the age of 18, 2% of the outstanding lot loan balance is forgiven annually, up to 6% for 3 children. This only applies if both parents are American citizens working full-time jobs. It rewards the families who are the future of America, making home ownership more achievable and strengthening community bonds by enabling stable family homes. This is not welfare. It's investing in the demographic future of the nation. Step 4 for the America First monetary policy is to end this madness of money printing and restoring true ownership. The final pillar is tackling the root cause of inflation that supercharged the housing bubble and eroded wages, and that is the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve System will be abolished. Its charter is revoked. The government has proven over and over that it cannot be trusted with the printing press. The feds consistently prioritize Wall Street and asset prices over small-town America and purchasing power. Its policies are the primary driver of the wealth gap, enriching the connected while impoverishing the working class. Abolishing the Federal Reserve ends this cycle of boom and bust, of deliberate devaluation of the dollar. The United States dollar is returned to a gold standard. The dollar's value is fixed to a specific weight of gold, and this restores sound money and it ends inflation at its source, and it guarantees the dollar's value for generations to come. This isn't a niche idea. It's the bedrock of stable economies throughout history. But the most radical and transformative step for ordinary Americans as well is the abolition of property tax. State constitutions will be amended to eliminate this insidious tax. In my vision of America, you do not pay taxes on something you already own. If you buy a house, it is yours, absolutely and forever. The government cannot steal it from you because you fell on hard times or you got old and you can't pay for it. Property tax is a relic of feudalism, a constant reminder that you're really just a tenant of the state. Ending it frees homeowners from a crushing, regressive burden, especially on fixed incomes, and it truly empowers ownership. It shifts the tax burden to more equitable sources like consumption taxes on imports or closing corporate loopholes, but the principle is sacred. In America, Americans own their property, free and clear. No more fear of losing your home to the government because you can't pay the ever-rising tax bill. This is fundamental to restoring dignity and true freedom. In my vision of America, Americans will own things and they will be happy. This is the path forward. It's bold, it's necessary, and it's rooted in the simple, foundational principle that a nation exists first and foremost for the benefit of its citizens. It requires courage, it requires political will, and a complete rejection of the failed globalist ideology that has brought us to the brink. We must stop the invasion of our borders, we must stop the flood of labor that suppresses our wages, and we must break the corporate grip on housing and restore sound money and true ownership. Our nation's survival is at stake here. This is about ensuring that the America our grandparents and our parents knew, which is a land of opportunity, of stable families, of achievable dreams, isn't lost forever to a policy-driven demographic and economic collapse. Will we summon the will to save ourselves? Or will we succumb to the slow death of 1,000 policy cuts? The choice is ours, and the solutions are clear. It's time for America first. Not just as a slogan, but as a governing philosophy that puts the needs, the security, and the future of American citizens above all else. That's the reality, that's the crisis, and that's how we fix it. No more excuses, no more delays. The time for decisive action is now. God bless our beautiful nation, and may we have the strength to preserve it for generations of real Americans to come. America first, America always. God bless you all. Thank you for watching. Jimmy Talks out.